Welcome, everybody, to our webinar about communicating value at the edge. My name is James Christopherson. I'm an account director here at Sterling Communications. And our guest today is Tom Williams, Vice President of Worldwide Sales and Marketing at Veea. So today we're talking about the role of communications in a complex industry such as edge computing.
We provide an edge platform or an edge gateway solution. And to Veea, the edge is where people, things, and places are connected. This could be a home, it could be your office, it could be this hotel I'm sitting in, it could be a farm field or a warehouse. We've partnered with different industry leaders that really help refine our solution. Partners such as Tritium, which is a division of Honeywell, Cable Labs, Qualcomm, and all of these partnerships really help add value for our partners and our channel partners and their customers. We're a bit of a Swiss Army knife, right? We've got quite a diversity and variety of solutions that are supported by the Veea Edge platform. These deployments can be a farm field here in Indiana, it could be a remote village in Indonesia, or it could be a warehouse in Mexico.
How do you think about communications in a complex industry like edge computing that is, to your point, when you guys are a bit of a Swiss Army knife company and you play in multiple verticals, there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of kind of highly technical language that is used on a daily basis. Can you talk about how, as a marketing leader, you strike the balance between effectively communicating to your various audiences what it is you do without spilling over into overly technical kind of jargon-oriented language?
Yeah, absolutely. In the technology industry, we'll just leave it very broadly there. It's cluttered with jargon and acronyms and buzzwords. And essentially, we try to keep things simple, right? The edge is where people, things, and places can connect. That edge can be defined differently for different scenarios. A home, it could be connecting smart devices or security or entertainment. Your office can be workplace automation, heating, building controls, access controls. A farm is just environmental or energy sensors. Industrial sites like a warehouse, it's asset tracking and energy controls. But for Veea, we're trying to be consistent and use jargon-free real-world examples and try to keep things simple. Trying to talk to our partners and our customers at the level that they're at. They don't go through their daily life talking through our jargon on our examples and our acronyms, but by keeping a simple approach, it helps connect familiar concepts to our powerful edge capabilities and cuts through the noise of buzzwords and technical speak. It's really about keeping it simple and trying to keep it simple in terms knowing that many of our customers come from different backgrounds within the technology sector, if you will. And many of our partners and customers, English might not be the second, much less third language. So trying to keep things simple is very helpful for us from a communication perspective.
How do you go about building trust with each of these different audiences in different parts of the globe, doing different kinds of things, right? Different kinds of use cases. How do you assure potential customers that Veea is the best available product for them and can be trusted?
I think at its core, as you've learned over time, you and Sterling, because we do so much, there's not a single direct competitor for what we do. We're not in a retail game where we're Coke versus Pepsi or Bud versus Miller. So we try to break this down into a few simple things, right? First off is problem validation, making sure that we have a clear understanding of our customer or our systems integrator channel partners' pain points, and then support that pain point with data to validate that the problem is real and significant, right? Just because there's a use case or an opportunity, we need to understand that it's proven, that there's a solution for it, and data helps drive that. So once we've got data to support and prove the use case, then we move into really market credibility, referencing frameworks or methodologies that we've adopted and implemented for like or similar deployments. So now we've established some credibility because we've done this before. And then from there, it's extracting more metrics and results of these pilot programmings or these beta testings, right? So providing results for what we've collected from an in-building deployment in an office environment, from a consumption of Wi-Fi or IoT devices that are connected, demonstrating value in the data that we've collected from sensors that are deployed across agriculture environments in soil or energy management. So now we've got metrics and results, which then helps us communicate our experience and our expertise. So being able to say, we understand your problem, we can solve that problem, and here's how we've solved it in the past, not just with what our technology can do, but what our technology has done. So now we've got the experience, we've got the data to support this. So we're then supporting that customer, and then it gets into educating the market. Then we start stepping into, we've deployed a farm field, we've deployed 3, we've deployed X. And that allows us to get into some more thought leadership and education. So whether it's webinars like this, whether it's getting in front of panel discussions, thought leadership positions at conferences or events, it really just builds over time. And as we horizontally grow with use cases and partners, and then vertically grow within each, it helps us build our credibility, build our experience, build our thought leadership.
Something you just mentioned in the first part of your answer there, talking about understanding each customer's unique pain point, right? That is a lesson that's obviously incredibly valuable, and it matters no matter what stage of the journey your company is in. Understanding your customers' pain points is mission critical, obviously.
It's that testimonial for what value we've added to their life, whether it's, again, time saved and not having to go measure plot by plot of land to look at moisture capabilities, to efficiencies and energy savings from HVAC systems that are used for air quality in chicken coops, for example. It's all about being able to build that testimonial based upon data. And that's where I think the journalist or the public takes a look at it, right?
Once you get your customers to a place where they are willing to advocate for you and advocate for your solution, can you talk about how you and Veea think about leveraging those partners to up-level your marketing efforts through use cases and case studies?
Value in our ecosystem isn't really communicated, it's demonstrated, right? As we talked a little bit about, it's tangible results, it's measurable impact. Scaling up those channel partners is really starting with that source of truth, that data, and building upon it. As an example, that farmer who's got LoRa-based sensors in his farm field, his value is measured by time saved and not having to drive around his fields. That value is going to be measured differently than, say, that warehouse in Mexico that's increased operational efficiencies and supply chain management through asset tracking solutions that are enabled through Veea Hubs. So that dollar for dollar savings is going to look a little bit different, but they're both use case data that has been delivered through the transformative capabilities of what Veea can bring to the table. And then that data is then easily used in those metrics or those items that I've talked before about putting together informed use cases, and not use cases about the technology, but use cases and white papers about what we've done and why and what that value is, which then can lead into thought leadership opportunities, presentations, and other content that gets out into the public domain, whether it's at a conference or a webinar that relies upon not what we can do, but what we've done and what that value that's been derived. This is a Me Too world, right? So if channel partner X plays in a particular space and channel partner Y is tangentially related to that and is of interest, it just helps build credibility, not just credibility in what we've done, but credibility across different ecosystems potentially.
Are there any other best practices that you've learned in your time at Veea or just in your career as a marketing leader, just to help drive market awareness more broadly? How do you kind of break into these new verticals that maybe Veea doesn't already have a presence in?
It's really developing a clear, validated narrative that's supported and understood. Clear messaging, clear communication, and that might resonate from what our end customer channel looks like to their end consumers, to, more importantly, internally, and making sure that everybody understands why we're going after a particular vertical or why a particular channel partner makes sense.
What's the most difficult communications challenge you've ever faced?
I think the most complex challenge, at least from a Veea perspective, is going back to what I said earlier. English isn't necessarily the first language in some of our deployments or some of our engagements. So I think a challenge would be keeping things simple and effective, and communicating what we're going to do and why, having supporting documentation, being clear and concise and on point with what we're doing and why, or how our solution works, or how to be onboarded. I think that's really a challenge that we may face day in and day out. On any given day, we could be helping a village leader in Indonesia bring connectivity to their village. We could be talking to a warehouse manager in Mexico. We could be talking to a farmer here in the United States. 3 different languages, three different hours of the day, three different implementations of our solution, but all coming out of the Veea Edge platform and the use cases we enabled. So our communication needs to be consistent, needs to be concise.
I would just add that, and this isn't necessarily unique to Via. This is true with a number of kind of B2B kind of infrastructure, back-end technology related companies. It can be challenging to fight back against the jargon and the buzzwords because so much of how technical people communicate about technical things just naturally lends itself to jargon. And so very few of a company's audiences, there's multiple audiences you're speaking to at any given time, right? Very few of those audiences care to get into the technical specifications of how something works. They want to know, does it solve my problem? Does it make my life easier? You do have to have, obviously, technical chops and technical messaging to speak to those product leaders. But again, does the market at large care about that stuff? Maybe not. And so you have to make sure you're concise and clear, like you just mentioned, right? For those.
Well, our customers, or maybe the end users of our solution, of our customers, they don't go talking in acronyms and buzzwords and technology catchphrases, especially about the edge. You and I don't go through our day talking about electricity and how it works and what happens. We just know that when we turn on a light or when we go to charge our phone, it works. We don't care about all the other stuff because we just want that functionality to work. Similarly, the end customers and where we deploy our solution, they just need things to work. They just want the value that we've told them will happen to occur, whether it's generate more revenue, save money, increase operational efficiencies. They just expect that to happen because of what we've communicated.
Tom, is there a particular story or analogy that you think really captures what Veea does, or what edge computing, the magic of edge computing really does?
I think a story about what Veea does, I'd look no further than what we've been able to do with some of these remote deployments in digital inclusion or connecting the unconnected. There's a couple of smaller scale deployments in Mexico. There's one in Indonesia. And what we're doing in those instances is bringing connectivity to a geographic area that might not have the same kind of connectivity that you or I experience on a day in and day out basis. And sure, people want to connect their device, but if you take a look at when there's connectivity, it provides a lot more educational and economic opportunity. So in the Indonesian example, it's bringing connectivity to schooling. So, children in those environments, they don't have access to Google Documents and online learning, but at least bringing connectivity can help them start. Similarly, it can provide economic advantages for inter-village trading or the ability to market goods from one place to the next. One of the very first deployments we had was in a neighborhood outside of Panama City, Panama. And in talking to some of the residents who had connectivity, this one mother, her response still resonates with those of us at Veea today. It wasn't necessarily that now she's got better internet connectivity to have Netflix or to have connectivity in general. It was so that her children can have Khan dashboards for math and for schooling, and being able to help them have an advantage or bring them on par with some other children around the world who have access to this day in and day out, whether they want to use it or not. That sort of story and the good that we're providing and the value that people perceive in having connectivity is really heartwarming for us, and it really drives our mission in trying to provide that connectivity.
Yep. How different is the value proposition now from when you joined the company a few years ago? And how different do you think it will be 5 years from now?
So from where it was a couple of years back, I think we've really found where the value is that we can provide. And I mentioned the digital inclusion, connecting unconnected areas. I think that's a bit different. I think we were a little bit different skewed on customer focus and engagements then. I'll reference Indiana, where I'm at today, just bringing connectivity through government-funded programs to rural areas who don't have the same speeds that we do in urban areas. But then you can drive more functionality, such as smart agriculture solutions and creating efficiencies or a better lifestyle for that farmer who doesn't need to go physically inspect 35 different plots of land to see if it rained last night. Everything's on an app these days, but the touch of an app can tell them what's happening. So I think that's changed a little bit. I think, that do good, we're adding value and doing good for society is really resonating with us at Veea because it's meaningful, it's impactful. Conversely, the refined focus is also helping us in other areas as well. So some of the other use cases that I described weren't necessarily in line of sight focus when I joined a couple of years ago, and they're there today. It's been a transformation. You ask about 5 years from now, I think 5 years from now, you're going to see a lot more AI involved in the ecosystem in general. I think this is where our Edge platform really adds a lot of value in being able to store content and AI applications and have actionable content with what our hardware can do at the edge, which will have meaningful, impactful results. Maybe not just at a farm, maybe it's that energy grid, that electrical grid that's covering that rural area. I think there's a lot of upside with where technology is headed and where Veea is positioned to capitalize on that.